right, we should be seeing the notifications there.
The first. Yep, you're
YouTube
You're up on
notification.
Facebook?
Oh, and there we are on the Facebook.
Let's just wait for some people to come on in.
Mm-hmm. Give it a second.
Yeah, it
At
looks
least-
like your lower thirds up on the screen again on Facebook, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second.
It's up on the VCN. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Virtual Cantina Watch-Along. We are on the march to Mando Season 3, which is coming up in less than 1 month away, which is pretty crazy at this point. My name is Spencer. I'm one of your hosts for the evening, and your producer for the night is Dave. Dave, how are you?
Hey, good evening, everybody.
And with Dave is always Jeff. Jeff, how are you, sir?
Good. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. And joining us as always is the governor himself, John. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Hello, everybody. Really looking forward to speaking to this gentleman tonight.
Absolutely. So before we reintroduce our special guest, great week in Star Wars Celebration news. The first batch of guests have been announced, which is absolutely fantastic. A nice mixture of old favorites, some new favorites, and some first timers, which is absolutely incredible. Very excited about the Obi-Wan Kenobi guests that have been announced for that. And also want to plug the fact that this coming Saturday on the Virtual Cantina Network, we are going to be doing a special intergalactic news desk with several people involved with all the events around Celebration in London this weekend. We'll give you some more information about that in a little bit. But it's our pleasure to once again bring to the Virtual Cantina our good friend, Hal Hickel. Hal, how are you, sir?
Thanks, gang. I'm good. I'm looking forward to revisiting the finale of season 2. It's been a while for me since I've seen it, so it'll be fun.
We're very excited to have you with us again, and we love the first edition that you did with us when we did season 1 finale. Obviously, there's a lot to go off on this one, especially since there was the big swerve, if you will, at the third act of this episode. But working on season 2, I mean, what was the mentality going into season 2 after the success of the first season?
Well, it felt to me, just immediately reading the scripts for season 2 when they first started coming in, everything seemed a bit bigger. The dragon sequences in the first episode of the season were huge, and there was just a lot. There's just a lot more stuff, and I think we probably had. I think we hit something like 4,000 visual effect shots in the first season, and I think the second season it was more like 5,000. So in terms of volume, it increased, but I think in complexity as well. So that's the thing I remember most, and just digging where it was all heading. It was a lot of good, fun stuff. We get to see, Gamorrean fighting in a ring, and the dragon, and these super trooper droid troopers, and of course the ending, which was super exciting, and keeping that all under wraps and everything was both nerve-wracking and exciting, because we had to go to real extreme lengths to try and keep that from leaking. Although I have to say, we've had a really good track record with that over the seasons of stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember the first Celebration panel where they had the Mandalorian. Kathy Kenny came on and said, "You have absolutely no idea what is coming," and that was going to be the child at that point. And then the whole sequence of we'll get into the whole the Plo Koon conspiracy as we're watching the episode.
The Plo Koon gambit, yes.
Yeah. But all of us, as fans, theorizing who it's going to be. Are they going to go for the low-hanging fruit, or we're going to get something that is going to be blow our minds? And we'll get to that. But obviously, we're going to have a lot of great questions tonight. And Dave, where could people ask questions tonight?
So If you are watching along either on Facebook or YouTube, I am monitoring both of those chats over here and over there. So just ask your questions right away in the chat, and at an opportune moment of breaking the conversation, I will try and get as many of those in as possible.
So we've all watched obviously the gallery of season 2. What was your impression, obviously before we talk about the Gambit, that they were, as we affectionately call it, Luke Skywalker Prime showed up? What was the thought process like when you first read that you were going to bring back Jedi Luke into the canon?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff is always terrifying. We've done some things like that on Rogue One. They're super hard to do. The work on Rogue One was done in ILM. The work on the season 2 finale was done at Lola, who are great at that. They're pioneers in that kind of work. Trent Claus and his crew at Lola are really brilliant at that. One of the reasons we did it with Lola on with Luke was that Peyton, the director of that episode, Peyton Reed, he had worked with them, and they'd done some brilliant work for him on the first Ant-Man film, de-aging Michael Douglas.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and so he'd worked with them, and he was comfortable with that process and understood it, and so it seemed like a good way to go. And we were like, great, because we know they'll handle it, and then that's one less thing we have to. I mean, we still have to worry about it because ultimately, Richard Bluff, who's the overall VFX soup, and myself as the overall A&M soup, we have to put our eyes to that stuff and communicate with Lola and look at the work and all that. But as I said, they're brilliant, and Trent Claus and his group are just brilliant. And so for me, it was like, great, let's go. Let's do that. And I learned a lot because their process is very different from almost anyone else's. They've really developed their own sort of process for doing de-aging, that kind of work. And I found it really fascinating to get to sort of watch that vicariously. But mostly as the date approached for the shoot that Mark was going to be a part of, that for me was just one of the most exciting things in my whole professional career. I've never met Mark before that, and to get to meet him for the first time in full Jedi attire on a Star Wars set was, pretty exciting. I was kind of vibrating. I don't think it was actually touching the floor. I think it was sort of gliding over it. But no, it was super exciting. And I remember that at the very beginning of the day, they were reviewing the cut of the sequence in this little editorial tent off to the side of the set, just discussing what the day was going to be and how things were going to go, because there were a lot of technical considerations and things. And I remember Mark saying, I don't think I've ever said the line, "May the Force be with you," on screen. And we all just, it was like goosebumps. It was like, ooh, oh my God. And we all started thinking, anyway, so that day was just magical. Really, really exciting. And R2 was there.
I was about to say, I remember first when you were talking about, how the original movie in '77 affected you, and all of a sudden you got Luke Skywalker and R2-D2 staying right in front of you. So that could have been I can just imagine.
Yeah, R2's interaction was one of the best in that episode as well, or that the season even. R2 and Grogu meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
But are they meeting for the first time?
Well, that's the other thing. Yes, we don't know.
Well, it's also
we don't talk about that.
The subtext, conversation that we've all seen online of Grogu and R2, and R2's like, "Holy crap, the baby Yoda!" It's like,
Yep. No, it's great. It's great stuff. Peyton did a great job with the episode, and he had a really good touch. That whole moment when Din takes his helmet off and baby, Grogu touches his face and all that. That really, there was a lot of, those scenes were handled. All the scenes in the episode were handled carefully, but those especially, like so much attention, so many conversations, and reviews and discussing about little tweaks we could do and timing, things we could tweak and change and stuff, because it was just such a big moment.
One of my favorite things to do is to watch, people film their live reaction to things like that, and just to see people's reactions to that moment. I mean,
Oh yeah.
for me, being an original generation Star Wars fan like you, to see that just floods of tears, but to see other people's reactions to that moment was just incredible. So they got it absolutely spot on. But I have another question for you. So it's kind of, you were talking about some of the challenges moving from season 1 to season 2 and having more work, transitioning from season 1 to 2 and then to Book of Boba Fett, with
Right.
that particular production. Did that feel like a natural progression, or was that slightly different, in terms of challenges and opportunities? Tell us a little bit about the transition from Mando through to Book of Boba Fett.
I mean, in some ways it felt like just a continuation, because a lot of the crew that we've assembled, both on the visual effects side and on the live action side and all that, were, rolling off of one and onto the other. And so it felt very familiar. But there were things that definitely gave it a different vibe. For one thing, it was largely Robert's season. I mean, John is still very involved and all that, but it was kind of more Robert's deal. And so that gave it a different vibe, and he's a great guy to work for and just awesome, super creative. And he's one of those guys you kind of hate a little bit because he can do everything. Like, he plays the guitar well, he directs. I suspect he could probably act if he wanted to. I've never seen him. I don't know if he's done much acting, but he's just kind of seems to be able to do all this. He's like a great dad. Like, we'll be on a call and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, my son's working with me on a film now," and just be like, "Wow, he's just got like the dream." So he's super cool. And but he's different from John, he's different from Dave, and so that gives things a little bit different vibe. But yeah, mostly it just kind of felt like moving on to the next season. I was a little less involved because whatever, this, that, and the other. There were different projects happening at the same time, and we can't do everything all at once. So Paul Cavanaugh, who's great, he's another one of our ILM Anim Soups, was the overall animation supervisor on Book of Boba Fett. I was on a lot of early calls talking about like the train heist sequence and some other things, but then I had to kind of segue off and get busy with some other stuff. And Paul saw most of that through. But it was good, really good fun. Great episode. I love the Rancor stuff. I was jealous to not be working on that myself because it was so King Kong like, and I'm a huge.
Well, it's funny you
I
should
remember
say
you
that.
saying.
So we do shirts for our our events, whatever we do. And since we're going to London, the cover of our racer for London is actually the Rancor climbing Big Ben.
That's awesome.
So we
Perfect.
took it directly from Fett. So we're like, we had to do that. And that's actually a good segue, because starting next week, we are going to be watching the last 3 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, the Mando-centric episodes. And after the extra credit scene tonight, we will announce who our guests, plural, will be for next week. And it's going to be a really good one. We're very excited about our guests for next week, but we'll talk about that for next week, at the end of that. But is there any questions in the crowd, Dave?
I am not seeing anything in particular at the moment.
Come on, crowd.
They're late.
Yes, people are here. People are lurking on both the YouTube and the Facebook. We see you. We hear you breathing out there. So if you have any questions for Hal before the episode, go ahead and let us know. We'll get those in for you.
So I have another question, but it's not related to Mando or Book of Boba Fett. So
God.
we all know, and you talked about it last time about your work with Rogue One. And I think, for me personally, one of the best standalone movie. I think the whole production team, Gareth particularly, got it spot on. But I got to ask this question: were you involved in the Vader scene, right at the end, in terms of visual effects for that particular scene? And what do you think about that? the brutality of Vader compared to other, other movies and sequences we've seen him act in, in terms of behavior. That to me was just taking it to another level with Vader. He was so critical and brutal with, dealing with the rebel forces.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that sequence. And I think it's probably most folks know this already, but the scene was pitched by Garrett's editor Jabez Olson, who it was his idea, and I think it was probably during the period when, I know it was before the reshoots, but I think it was in the run up to that the idea got pitched, because it was like, well, we're moving to reshoots. Here's an idea, and everybody loved it. Kathy and everybody loved it. And so it happened. And it's one of the scenes that, because, Tony Gilroy came on and he had a big effect on the structure of particularly the third act, but other parts of the film as well. But that scene, Gareth directed, the hallway scene. And I wouldn't ordinarily have been on set for that because, K2 is not in, or any other animated sort of characters and things. But I happened to be over there for, I think we were recording new lines for K2 at a recording place on Dean Street, Soho. And so at some point during that trip, we made the trek out to Pinewood just to kind of see what was going on and say hello to folks. And they were right in the middle of that scene. So I was super thrilled. I was like, oh my God, this is great. They're right in the middle of it. And Garrett was directing it. And so that was exciting. But there wasn't, for me personally, there wasn't much to do in that scene because, again, there weren't CG characters or droids or other flying objects that have to be animated. There was effects work, of course, the lightsaber and other things. And I was in all those VFX reviews, so I, remember hearing all the conversations about it. But me personally, I didn't have much role in that. But I loved it. I loved it. I thought it was the perfect pickup after the very down moment when Jen and Cassian are, perish on the beach, and it just sort of lifted you up, not with happiness, but with energy, and excitement, and brought you just to the right, delivers you just to the right place for the final moment. So I thought it was just a brilliant ending. That's the great thing about movies is some of your favorite movies that seem like brilliantly crafted. They don't get arrived that way in the way that people maybe think of it all just being sort of conceived in a brilliant way right from the get-go. Sometimes stuff just kind of happens, or late in the process, or out of left field, or a scene gets cut because the set dressing didn't look, or something, like some weird thing that you don't really think about much wasn't satisfying the director. They cut the scene, but the movie ended up working much better because there's all kinds of things like that, and that's just another one of those examples because people love that scene, but it was a very late addition, a brilliant idea, but very late in the process. And
so when speaking of that scene in particular, when you guys were shooting the third act of this particular episode that we're about to watch, was there a lot of talk that this is basically the equivalent? I mean, I know a lot of fan theorists said it's the same. It's the same thing, but it's just as good, if not better, with Luke Skywalker. Was that talked about on set that this is the Rogue One moment?
That's where I was going with my next question.
Yeah, not on set. I'll tell you, the first time I had a conversation about that, it was with Jet Lucas, George's son, because Jet was on our crew on seasons 1 and 2. And he worked in post-production with us. He's a great guy. And he brought it up to me. He's like, man, this is just like, it's like Luke, father and son, paired scenes. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. Pops out of the elevator and starts cutting down droids. And I was like, yeah, it is kind of there. You could, there's a whole thing. And then since then, of course, I've seen fan videos and different things where people like cut the music from one together, or side by side, or cut the two together and all that stuff. But at the time, like, definitely, I don't remember anyone saying it on set to me. I mean, somebody might have talked about it to me, but later when we were working on it in post, that's when I remember having conversations about it. And the first one I recall was with Jed. He mentioned it. I was like, oh yeah, right. He's
Very cool. So we have our first question over here from the chat. Is Chantel is asking, so when production starts to go, in a different direction, whether it's a change in who's in charge of whatever scene or whatnot, how much work that you've already done can get scrapped completely and then you're in a start over? And how does that go?
It really depends on the project and at what stage that decision gets made. On the streaming series, the Mandalorian series, there hasn't been a whole lot of that. We're pretty efficient, and we can't, the streaming budgets are lower, per shot, and we have a big volume. We can't really afford to like scrap a whole sequence and that kind of thing. Plus, John, as a filmmaker, is really averse to that sort of thing. With Rogue, the features are a little bit different kettle of fish. There's a little more space there plus reshoots are always part of almost any big film like that these days anyway. So on Rogue, there were certainly some shots that were in some form of progress that ended up not in the movie. For instance, people have seen the shots from the trailers of them running across the beach that ended up not in the film. But not as much as you'd think. Honestly, a lot of it was moving pieces around rather than cutting stuff out or completely changing it all together. But some of the beach stuff went away. And then I think the single chunk that I remember most in terms of animation and being pretty far along with it was K2SO's death. We had already animated that. It wasn't all the way through rendering and all that, but we animated it and pretty much got it approved. And that was a scene that changed completely. And that had to do with combining the communications tower and the citadel where the plans are kept into one building, making that one building. There used to be two buildings, and that's why they had to run across the beach. They had stolen the plans, and now we're trying to get to the tower, and that all changed when they got put together. There was an outside bunker, kind of that same area where, or similar to the area where Chirrut dies and those guys get shot down on the beach, and there's that sort of bunker that leads to that horizontal train car elevator thing that takes you to the thing. They're trying to get in that door. Krennic his shuttle has landed on the beach. He disembarks with his death troopers and he's shooting, and K2SO sacrifices himself to protect Jyn at the door, and he gets shot down and dies, and she and Cassie get through the door and it closes and they get away. And that became obviously his death scene in the data center instead. So that all had to be changed. But outside that, I don't remember a lot of like, oh my God, we finished this whole sequence and now it's scrapped. There was surprisingly little of that. What was difficult about the rearrangement of stuff was that it affected the space battle a lot. And we were trying desperately at that point, because the space battle is largely CG. You have cockpit shots with plates of actors, but a lot of it's just all CG. So for post-production, it's something that's very attractive to get started on early, because you're not waiting on the directors to pick takes of cockpit shots and things like that. You can get started on all these big exterior shots, but that whole structure was changing. When and where we were cutting to space and for what purpose was changing all the time, and so it made it tough to wrangle that into shape. But the great thing about that, at least for me, was that it created this opportunity for us in visual effects to be involved with helping to craft story. And so they put together a little group, and it was Kiri Hart from Story, and Dave Filoni participated, John Knoll, myself, a few Pablo Hidalgo, a few other people. We would get together and have these little meetings with a whiteboard and talk about, all kinds of stuff. That's where the idea for crashing the Star Destroyers together came out. That was John's idea, but it came out of those meetings, and he pitched that idea, and everyone liked it. But anyway, so that was the fun part of it, was that we got to form our almost like our own little mini story group to fix those problems and come up with a plan. But it was a lot of work.
When's that? Where's that original K2SO? Where's that death? Is that going to live on a special edition somewhere? Is it, on Alan Tudyk's computer only? Where?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it certainly exists. I wish I had a quick time of it. I don't, but it's a thing that could be put together as an extra. Certainly, it would only be what we call plastic renders or hardware renders.
Right.
The sort of animation renders before it gets all pretty and realistic looking. But it could tell the story. You could put it together as that. I don't know how much appetite Disney has for alternate takes and
tell Disney that the fans have an appetite for that.
Sure. No, believe me, I get it. It used to be really exciting back in the day before the internet and all that, when there would be rumors of stuff like that. Like I remember Blade Runner, there were all kinds of crazy rumors about deleted scenes from Blade Runner. Some of them were true, like Holden in the hospital. Sorry, getting way off track here, but I'll keep it short. But I remember people talking to me about, oh yeah, they shot this whole scene where Roy Batty and the other replicants get out of the crashed shuttle on the coast, and he's got this like battle armor, and that's what those tattoos on his body are for. Those are like the attachment. Like it was really detailed, and as far as I know, none of it was true. Like I don't know, but yeah, we fans have always been super interested in that kind of stuff. Like
what I've been fun.
Caution Station. I mean,
Blade Runner was my favorite movie of all time. Nothing will ever change that.
Yeah.
Way ahead of its time.
I mean, that's the great thing about sometimes about fan theories are great and not so great. I mean, I remember, back in the day before obviously we had the internet, and us fans would talk about, well, the reason why Anakin is like that is because he fell into a volcano, and then when we got Sith, it was like, okay, yes, that actually did kind of happen.
That was real.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
I remember the conversations that fans would have about that,
Oh yeah, for sure. Plus, you can get weird false memories. Because I think I had the Star Wars storybook, which had those pictures of Luke by the Treadwell droid out by the evaporator, looking up in the sky with his binoculars. And I think maybe some footage of that might have been in one of the making of shows that aired on, ABC or whatever back when Star Wars first came out. I'm not sure. But for years afterwards, I had this false memory that the first time I saw the film in Denver at the this big Cinerama theater, the Cooper, that scene was in there, and that subsequently it was removed. And I was sure of it. And then since then, I've learned that that's absolutely not the case. There was never a theatrical cut that had that in there. And I think that I manufactured it out of these other images from other places and inserted it in my mind. But
absolutely. So we're getting ready. We're getting ready for that to start. But I believe
everyone's like, I thought we were watching an episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Happy to talk.
Dave, before we get in, there was another question you want to ask?
Yeah, last question before we get into watching the episode is Chantel again. Speaking of the battle in space in Rogue One, how difficult or how cool or how much easier did it make it to incorporate the older footage of the pilots from A New Hope, to put that sort of stuff in?
That was one of the coolest things, and we might have talked about this last time. I don't remember, but I'll try and make a short version of it. What was cool about it was they went back and looked at alternate takes from the Lucasfilm, I guess from the Lucasfilm archives, I assume, or maybe those are now owned by Disney. I don't know, but alternate takes that weren't used in the film of Red Leader and Gold Leader, and the Gold Leader footage was fine. Exposure wise, the Red Leader footage, if I remember right, was a bit underexposed in the black, so there's no detail there. So what we did was we had a CG X-wing cockpit from actually a separate project we were doing, cockpit interior. We had CG X-wings, of course, but we just didn't have a cockpit interior. But we had one at that point from this other real-time project we were doing. So we rotoed, we sort of cut out Red Leader from the footage, because exposure on him was pretty good. It was just the background stuff. And we pasted him into a CG X-wing cockpit. So that was Red Leader, and that worked fine, and it ended up looking good. Gold Leader, the footage was good. We, just same thing. We just had to clean it up and remove scratches and dirt and fading and correct for fading and all that. But there's that Y-wing run on the Star Destroyer where they drop the ion bombs that disable and cause the one to crash into the other. That the lead pilot, I don't remember the actress or the character's name, but she was filmed in an X-wing cockpit because the production didn't build a Y-wing cockpit interior, physical one,
Right.
for Rogue One. So we cut her out, pasted her over Gold Leader, and used the archival, the old footage of the Gold Leader Y-wing cockpit behind her. So the Red Leader has a modern CG X-wing cockpit. The female Gold Leader pilot, Gold Leader pilot, has the archival footage cockpit behind her, which I was kind of tickled me, the whole little shuffle. But yeah, that was great, and it got massive. It always got a massive, whoop from the audience as soon as you heard that guy's voice, coming on.
Mm-hmm.
Super cool.
That's amazing. Okay,
Very
I lied.
fun.
I got one more question before we start the episode. This is good. This is from Hanif, and I'm sorry, Hanif, I can't pronounce your last name, or I would butcher it if I tried. And Hanif says that grew up watching Star Wars in Pakistan. The question would be that, as Steven Spielberg has said, that all directors should be animators. Is there any plans for you to be directing film or TV?
I know Hanif. Quack, Hanif. He'll know what that means.
Oh, that was the Doug on Twitter. Yes. Okay.
Not for me at the moment. I wouldn't say never. I would say, for whatever reason, I kind of dig my little spot in the hierarchy. Like, I really like what I do, and part of that is sort of getting to know directors and partnering with them and helping them realize their vision and all that. I think probably, though, if I was going to get out there and direct a feature, I would have been agitating for that I should have been agitating for that years ago, and pitching scripts and maybe getting an agent and doing all the things I've seen people do who really are hungry for that particular goal. But I kind of dig what I do. So, but you never know. There have been some opportunities over the years. Actually, you mentioned animation, Hanif, and after Rango came out, there were some opportunities that might have worked out and just didn't, for a variety of reasons. Films that just didn't happen and stuff where I might have been a director or co-director or something. So it could happen someday. It's just not something I like what I do enough that I haven't been trying to because I know visual effects folks, particularly visual effects supervisors, who that is their goal, and usually the stepping stone is you sort of start doing second unit directing on projects, where the director starts to trust you with shooting second unit stuff, and then hopefully you move up. But I've seen people do that and have had success. I mean, James Cameron came from visual effects originally.
Mm-hmm.
So it happens. But for me, yeah, we'll see.
And what has James Cameron done? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And look where it got him. Gee.
Nothing worth a billion, that's for sure.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And Hanif says quack back in the chat. All right.
And
We
before
are
we
ready for watch along, Mr. Spencer.
And before we start with this, I also want to give a quick congratulations and shout out to a member of the Star Wars family, Mr. John Williams, not only getting his 56th Oscar nomination, but being the oldest person to ever be nominated at the age 90 for Fableman. So congratulations to
great
Mr.
movie. Great movie.
Yeah. Have you guys had Patrick Reed Johnson on any of your things?
We have not.
No, but we would definitely be interested.
You know who he is? He
I do.
directed a
Yes.
film called 52577.
Mhm.
That, yeah. And you mentioned Fablemans, and that's what jumped me onto it, is that that whole thing of depicting a childhood of making movies and wanting to be a filmmaker and all that. He's like the next generation after Steven, obviously, and
Wow.
if you haven't seen his film, it's really charming, and there's some great, because he had this whole thing that happened to him where he was a kid out in the Midwest, and he'd been inspired by 2001 and Close Encounters and so forth, and his mom finally just called Herb Lightman, who was the editor of American Cinematographer, and said, my son wants to make movies. If I fly him out to California, could you introduce him to some people? And Herb said, yeah. And so she flew her son out there. And so he goes to Future General right when they're making Close Encounters, and he meets Steven Spielberg. This all really happened, but it's depicted charmingly in the film. He meets Douglas Trumbull and Steven Spielberg, and then Herb drives him across town up to the valley to ILM, on where it was then on Valjean Avenue in Van Nuys, and they're in the middle of finishing Star Wars, and Dykstra shows him around the shop and what they're doing in this really kind of scatterbrained way that's super funny. And then he sits him down on one of the radial couches and screens the work print as it was at that point in time for the film. So Patrick always calls himself Star Wars' first fan, because he was the first outsider to get to just see it. And it totally inspired him. And then he later directed Baby's Day Out and some other films, and wrote Dragonheart and whatnot.
Oh.
So he, but then he embarked on quite a long journey in making this autobiographical film, and it's very charming and lovely. And anyways, it just shares some stuff with Dale. If you like that, you might like it as well.
I also want to quickly say a quick shout out and congratulations to another one of our Star Wars family members, David W. Collins, who was announced as the sound designer for Mandalorian Season 3.
Oh, yeah.
So congratulations to David.
Yeah, I saw a
Big
post
thrill.
about that.
And who knows? We might see David on a future episode. Might happen. Don't know. Yeah. But it's about that time. We're about to watch the season finale of season 2 Mandalorian, which is chapter 16. Dave, why don't you do the honors?
I will. Thank you very much. So we're gonna count them down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Don't make John attack you.
Aren't you Star Trek references? It's Star Wars.
It's also Mercedes' birthday today.
It is, yes.
So we have a member of the show who's having a birthday today as well.
Awesome. Oh, I've seen this show.
Yeah.
I
It
bet
looks
you've
familiar.
seen it over and over and over again in very close up and small detail.
Our first this season was had our first proper location shoot that wasn't volume and wasn't a physical set, but was actually out somewhere, that whole mountaintop thing.
Yeah.
Team Valley.
Yeah.
I want to
And
say
Star
quickly, for the guys in the room, Hal, you might find this interesting. We were discussing, on our regular Tuesday conversations that we hold as we were following along season 2. We were not placing bets, but we were very much kind of giving vociferous opinions about what the finale would entail. And I can remember mine being, I think Luke Skywalker might be involved, but I'll be really disappointed if he is. What a stupid thing to say.
Well, the thing was,
Wow.
so I remember we did a live watch along. So I woke up before 3 o'clock in the morning Eastern time and to watch this.
Mm.
And obviously, I'll flat out say my first pick was Mace Windu. I was
Yeah.
throwing that
We were betting
out
on
there
Mace.
because I was saying that Luke was low hanging fruit,
Right.
and I was thinking that I'm like, something, and I was like, please don't be Luke, please don't be Luke. And then when I saw the X-wing, I'm like, yeah, Luke Skywalker. And I'm like, and my rationale was, it was not what I wanted, it was what I needed. And that proved it right there.
Yeah.
I'm still hoping for Mace Windu.
Yeah, there you go. This is so great seeing the fire spray in action.
Yeah.
It's Slave One. I'm sorry.
Stop that. You stop.
This was the
Yeah.
perfect opening sequence for this episode for me, by the way. I thought this was just tremendous. really set the tone for the rest of this episode.
So I have to ask you, what was your impression, Hal, of the Earl Shine Boba Fett here? It's it's like look at this. He went with a roller and decided to paint over it. Yeah, $39.99.
Yeah, it looked a little clean to me, but
Kind of, yeah.
a little perfect. But
But he did his
ship
repaint,
is
whatever.
one of my all-time
Because
favorites.
we're partial to this.
Well, that was one of the things we loved. We loved about the episode, chapter 15 is you finally got to see inside that ship. And we always just in the original trilogy, we only just got to see the cockpit or them hauling the carbonite Han Solo into the cargo bay. That was it, and that was just absolutely awesome.
Yeah, the whole rotating interior thing was a really fun gag to do and tricky. And Rich Bloss put a lot of time and effort into thinking that through, and other folks. But just it was a really cool thing to see, because it's one of my favorite all-time Star Wars designs. Nilo Rodis designed it, and his stuff was always really kind of weird and organic in a way that just really made it unique. And I love that. This tripped me out the first time I saw a cut of this scene. I'm like, wait a minute, did she shoot the guy's ear off? I was like,
this guy, he looks too young, honestly, to say that he was on the original Death Star.
Right.
That blew up.
Right.
I mean, he's really obviously trying to get to Cara Dune, but I was like, you're a bastard, man. Seriously, you're really
they
trying
go
to
right back
and
and forth, because she gives it right back to him. It's like, which Death Star? It's like, oh no, shot in the face.
Just going really quickly back to what you're saying, Hal, do you get many reference points? If you're going to work on something like the Interior Slave 1, do you get many reference points, or is it pretty much, go along with what you think it might look like?
well, Doug Chang and his art group, his Lucasfilm art group, are brilliant, and they, that largely falls to them. I mean, John will have input and thoughts and this, that, and the other, and Dave is Filoni as well. But Doug is really the kind of beating heart of the design process for these projects, and so that's where it really comes from. I mean, I'm super like Doug's aesthetic and everything, and he knows Star Wars better than just about anybody since Ralph McQuarrie. So that's really where it happens.
Speaking of Mercedes.
Yep.
So, funny story, I mentioned this for a while ago. So, for a number of years, I actually worked in the independent professional wrestling realm. And the company I worked with produced Mercedes' first match ever.
Wow.
Well, I've known Mercedes since she started training, and her husband, who actually works for WWE as well, was involved as a wrestler at that time in New England. So I've known her before she got signed. So when she got to this, I'm so friends with her husband, Sarat. I'm like, oh my God, this is absolutely incredible. And she's actually doing a signing at Emerald City Comic Con with Katie and with Simon, who plays Axe Wolf. So they have the Night Owls together for their first signing ever right before Celebration.
That's super cool. That's super cool.
Now that she's also not signed to any particular company, she's starting to do a lot more on the con circuit as well, and with a lot of the Star Wars people as well.
She did such a great job with this. Like, she's just so into it, and so credible as like somebody who's tough. Like, you just buy it.
Well, plus also she does that. I mean, it might not have been her, but they did that tornado DDT that she's about to do in a few seconds on Boba Fett, of kicking off the side post there, but
breaking the table. Yeah,
that's an obscure wrestling reference. I have no idea.
I know that.
Just look at it when you see it happen.
It's
going to happen momentarily. But considering somebody so well, I'm surprised we haven't had somebody on the show, Mr.
Hey, I tried. Let's just say I put in the call.
Yeah.
But
put out the feelers.
But Bo-Katan calling Fett a donor, like,
yeah.
Oh, bro, like,
yeah, that's below the belt. It's too much.
Okay, here's the move.
Fire face off. That's so great.
The flamethrower stuff came off really well in this. It was tough though, because they're so close together. It was like, well, hang on, I think they're both, but it actually worked out. There was a lot of back and forth over that. I mean, in post production, in visual effects, to get
Mhm.
like the fire, but it really came off well, and I like the fire sims a lot. They really felt real in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the trail off of it just kind of dissolving, and that was really nice.
There's a little flicker out of the
Very,
mist.
very
Yeah, it's really good.
realistic. It's like they've come a long way with flames.
It's one of it like so hard to do for so long, and now that stuff's really good. Water's still really tough, although you've seen Avatar.
Mhm.
Cameron can do it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, it can't
Although
all
I've
be
heard
like-
complaints about that as well, where it's like too crystal clear or this and that. But of course, that's what you want for the movie.
Yeah,
And
That's
it's
too
an
bought it. I've had
alien
it.
planet.
Yeah, that too.
I
Look
mean,
at
it
that.
can't all be like Singing in the Rain where they poured down milk because water was just not showing.
Wouldn't show up on film.
So
There's
Indeed.
our light
Well,
cruiser.
Going to try to go back to Dead Man's Chest. I was out on some of the shooting scenes years after the production, and they would say that the amount of dye they would put into the shallows to make it look a little bit more pristine was just incredible.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep.
and we've been talking this obviously since season one, and obviously we're learning more and more about what Pershing does, but I love the fact that he's got the Camino badge. Like we keep on talking about the Camino badge in prequels. It's like
these hologram scenes, I've come to dread these because I'm sure they don't seem like much of anything from a visual effects standpoint, but I feel like every season we have scenes like this with holograms, and for whatever reason they're always kind of painful to get right in terms of design, because there's things that always change, like, oh, this is Pelly's hangar and it's being projected from this droid that doesn't work very well, so it shouldn't be super high tech, whereas this is on Boba's ship, and then another time it'll be somewhere else, and
Mhm.
but there's always differences in like the technology and what it should look like, and what's most importantly what it's depicting and what story it's telling for the audience. And you'd be amazed at how difficult I'm always happy to like sort of foist it off on somebody else. Oh, who's going to take that because
Well, and the amount of work that you can see that this would take is just to keep the visual interest. It's not static. You just look closely, it's slightly rotating, and it's constantly flickering.
It ripples like
really
there's
kind
a
of
lot going on.
like
And
the
it's-
droid is losing its projection capability, and it kind of flickers a little.
yeah, and it's a narrative element. It's like expositive, so it's like important that it clearly depicts whatever the heck it's
Oh
supposed
yeah.
to. Anyways, it's always just
Amazing.
but we joke about it now. We're like, oh great, more holograms.
And I'm sure it varies a lot based on, like, Marva was a giant hologram, and these are smaller, these handheld ones.
And I love how the fact now that they're talking about like Gideon being former ISB, and just after watching Andor, we actually seen the ISB in action. So it's kind of like
So, this is the miniature of the light cruiser, by the way, the physical miniature.
Oh, cool.
We trade off back and forth in the sequence between the physical miniature and CG versions of it. Like in a shot like this is all CG. Wait for a moment. Love Giancarlo. Never met him. Never been on set when he's on set. Bummer, because I just think he's amazing.
he's such a fantastic guy that
I've met him.
cons a couple
Yeah.
times.
I met him in San Francisco, and outside of a con, we had a long conversation about Pedro, which I'll tell you more about once we've gone off live air.
And speaking of Pedro, he's your host of Saturday Night Live this weekend with Coldplay as your musical guest. So watch
Not
Pedro.
this
I'm
weekend,
sure they'll do something
No,
Mandalorian.
February
Next
4th.
weekend.
That's not this
Next
weekend.
week? Okay.
Yeah, the 4th.
The next one.
Like I actually forget
Birthday.
some of these wider shots that are quicker
Mhm.
might be the CG light cruiser, but then when we get closer, it's definitely the model. I can't remember.
Probably the CG as they're going in and out of the tunnel.
Oh, for sure inside the tunnel. but it's more like shots where we just sort of pan over and it's kind of just like an element in the background. I can't remember now which is which is good. You're not supposed to know which, like that's the model for sure, just because it's a really hero angle. That's probably the model, but I'm not sure. Anyways, when you're inside looking out, like that's the model for sure.
Nice.
This is such a great thing. Just watching the shuttle going right in the launch bay.
Just about brings its wings up in time.
Just in time. That shuttle there is the only, from back in the day, original trilogy model kit I ever actually completed and painted and everything. I had that kit from Return of the Jedi.
Oh, snap.
And it didn't even look that great because I wasn't a great modeler, but I love that design, and I had it hanging from my ceiling for ages. I don't know whatever happened to it. Probably in a box somewhere.
But if you remember the glue on those models, Hal, wasn't exactly the best glue that you'd have. And so you'd glue something perfectly and let it dry, and then it would just lop to one side.
Yeah.
Oh, here it comes.
This is the whole deal.
Oh, no.
The Legacy FX folks built great practical suits, but there's always the plan was always to do CG versions as well, and so these shots are actually all CG. All those, even that tight close up of the eyes, just because we sort of evolved what we wanted the eyes to look like. So we ended up doing it CG. But the practical suits do play, and they played a really important role in terms of telling us what the trooper should look like in the scene, lighting wise and surface wise, and even movement wise. So it was a little bit of a mix of both the practical and the CG. Although
I was amazed personally by the way that trooper is styled, that they actually had a practical suit, because they have but then I was like, oh, okay, they have the motion capture stuff in the joints and all that, so it there's enough of the suit there that it can be used as a practical version.
I'll point out, if I can, I'll point out shots that I know are still the practical suit for sure. But the Legacy guys did a great job, and you never know. Sometimes stuff will remain practical all the way through the process. Sometimes you replace it, and you don't know going into it. So, but it was super useful for them to build the suit.
And I could
I'm an old school Dark Trooper guy, so I have a couple of helmets.
Look at that.
That are this has got the big long back end on it and everything.
I could see some similarities between, although I think it was animated or CGI for sure, between the Dark Troopers from this and the previous episode with, if you remember from Attack of the Clones, you had the droidicas, and you also had those robot troopers with the fist that would fire.
Yep, super battle droids.
Super battle droids. Thank you. I couldn't remember the name.
Yeah, I animated the original walk cycle for those guys, the super battle droids.
So do you think that Katie had flashbacks to Cylons when she saw the dark?
That'd be a great question for her, because it really is. It really does kind of feel like that, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was funny because obviously, a lot of us know that the animated was kind of Bo-Katan was modeled off of Dave's wife Anne, but bringing in Katie, who obviously had the experience as Starbuck playing the live action, was just there couldn't have been somebody else to do that has done that kind of work before. To switch on.
Oh yeah, no, she's perfect. We did a cool thing there where the torsos turn, then the hips follow, which is something a human couldn't do. Which we were kind of looking for opportunities to do things that would tell you that it couldn't be a person in a suit. But
was that Chris that just walked by?
There you go.
Could be. By the way, you have to keep talking to me because I get absorbed in this. I start watching and I'm like,
oh yeah,
get all into it. And I stop talking.
I was going to say earlier, I love this team of ladies taking
girls,
on.
badass girls.
Well, we compared this actually to, we were talking about the scene in Endgame when all the female characters show up to go against Thanos, and we felt that this was more natural as opposed to that felt forced. To put them all together.
And I liked Kara's gun malfunctioning.
Yeah, I was just about to say there was a lot of speculation around a blaster. What did you say? It was jammed.
Yeah,
blasters jammed.
I know there's no cartridge. Right? So
well, but in some blasters we've seen that there are cartridges. In Mando's in the pulse rifle, we've seen him putting cartridges in. No,
for sure. And we've had conversations about which weapons shoot lasers and which are what we call slug throwers, or other people use that term, but actually are firing a projectile. And we've had that conversation. So maybe hers is a projectile gun. I don't know. This was fun. So there was a gray suited stunty, firing with Mando, and then we, painted them out and modified the action to feel more robotic and stuff all through.
Okay.
Do you utilize a rocket sock'em robot?
I was just going to ask, how much inspiration 100%. Did you guys get from Rock'em Sock'em robots?
100%.
That one specific thing.
I wish we could have had the head pop up like
that would have been great.
It's been amazing. Somebody needs to do that.
This was tricky. There was lots of good like that. We had some of these shots are Lateef, probably Crowder as Stunty or Brandon. And then some of the Mando stuff is CG, a little bit. Mostly it's stunts, and it looks great. A little bit CG, and then the droid, of course, is all CG. Mm-hmm. And sometimes patterned after what the stunt actor did, and sometimes we completely deviated as the ideas evolved.
I love this flushing them out the airlock thing.
There's
classic
Mando
airlock.
There's Mando holding the bastard, as Brandon called it.
He did some work with that.
He hated that spear.
He hated that spear. He's like, it got stuck on everything every time he tried to pull it out. But he tells a really fantastic story about, Giancarlo, who committed to the fight scene that's coming up.
I know what you're going to say.
He went full out, and it was actually Brendan who did a lot of that. But Lateef, jumped in a couple of times. Well, the scenes that Brendan did, Lateef was offset, and he realized when he got offset that he forgot to tell Brendan that Giancarlo goes 100. So he had to switch helmets a couple of times because he didn't know it. He was like loopy. He's like, "Oh my God, I forgot to tell you." He swings for the fences. Watch out! So
he break his helmet
lightsabers. In fact, at some point they had to switch to. They ran out of sabers, and they had to switch to. Like one of Ahsoka's hilts or something that wasn't the right hilt because they ran out of the sabers with the correct hilt, and we had to actually replace it in a few shots at the end because it was the wrong hilt because they just ran out because he kept breaking them.
Oh wow!
I love it. I made a little graphic that was like the manacle cabinet. They go like and there's like Wookiee. Human, like little tiny
that was my next question. It's like, who thought of that? Like seriously, that's like wow.
It's the best. It's so great. And I think there was a consciousness that it would make everyone angry, like to see the little guy in his own medical, and that's that's storytelling.
Nerd rage is very powerful. So
yes.
I mean, the whole bit where he's throwing the stormtroopers around in the room.
Yeah, that's classic.
So great.
Oh yeah, that's like Buster Keaton type, comedy right there.
The Darksaber, I think we talked about this before, but it was tough to get right. It was hard in the 2 or 3 shots at the very end of season 1 that we see it, and then it kind of got a whole overhaul in season 2 to really like dial it in and make it feel like what Dave and George had conceived way back in the day. And it was tough to get right because there's a lot of elements to it. There's the negative space in the middle and the bright edge, but then there's also this kind of it's a little bit like the
electricity
with samurai swords, the temper line. Hamon, I think it's called the temper line. And there's sort of a wavy energy thing that sort of is an analog to that, and that it all took a lot to.
It's funny, the purists, let's refer to them as the purists. When we saw the Darksaber in the finale of season 1, I think most people were more excited than the child. They were, oh, it's the Darksaber.
I'll be honest, I was clueless, and when we got to those scenes, I was like, oh, I don't know, and I always have to be careful, because sometimes I'm letting on that there's something that Dave created that I haven't seen or I'm not clued into. But when the episodes aired, that's when I realized, I'm like, wow, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
So I started.
I can imagine, like, Dave's gonna like pull a couple of DVDs out of his coat pocket and make you watch.
Yeah.
No, here.
And I can totally see Brendan doing one of those things like Dave. It's that cartoon thing again, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
the whole of the Mandalorian books members just gasped as it came out.
Yeah.
This is a great scene with the saber versus the Beskar armor.
Beskar,
Just imagine the lightsaber prop shattering on each one of these swings, because he is fully committed. But you know what? It's so good. Like, it's so believable.
Look the way it glows.
And they're going so hardcore. You can see that Giancarlo's going 100.
Yep. Oh yeah, and by the way, all the conversations about, well, now the Darksaber can't cut Beskar, but there needs to be some, whatever. So the glow thing and all that.
Some inertia.
Right.
Transfer of energy.
Yeah, that was just pretty Giancarlo being superhuman right there. He's just grabbing the spear. That's what.
So here's the thing. Do you think we just saw that he knew he was being beaten? He kind of tossed the Darksaber. Like, you actually saw him. He kind of he flung it.
He's set this part up. He doesn't know what's going to happen, I think.
I mean, he sort of bones the whole situation here, where he knows that it has to be handed over by defeat, but he knows Bo really wants it, and so I feel like he kind of throws the fight at the end as a strategic thing, but I don't, it's a gray area.
I think that's one of the things I'm actually hoping that they talk about, obviously in season 3, is that, because when we finished up the Clone Wars and Rebels, Bo-Katan had it, and next thing you know, we're seeing at the end of season 1 Moff Gideon. There's we don't have that story that's in between, so I'm very hope that's one of my hopes, obviously,
right.
for the next season.
Is to hear how that happened. Is did he just steal it? Because he, of course, is not claiming to be the Mandalore. He doesn't have to win it in combat. He can just gank it. I'm gone.
Yeah,
but
a lot of technicality.
I agree with you, Hal. I think some of the kind of subliminal thinking behind this storyline is, I'm going to throw this away so that.
But you can see how pleased he is there as soon as they figure it out. Like, see,
you're gonna. Bo is going to have to fight Mando for the right to the Darksaber.
Yeah. And it may be that he realized at some point in the fight that he wasn't going to prevail and switch.
He was bested.
He's smart and super quick thinking. So, but I don't know. I like that it's all ambiguous. We don't know for sure.
If you can't prevail, have your two enemies destroy each other.
Exactly.
I mean, it was not like, I'm hopefully you're more boned up on the cartoon stuff, but in the cartoon, Bo-Katan was basically gifted the Darksaber and became the Mandalore. So she never really had the right heir for it. So now she's trying to legitimize herself, and she can't. That's probably eating at her as well.
Yeah.
This is what I'm loving. The troopers doing the superhero landing.
The Marvel landing. They were a lot of fun. I like them. When I was a little kid, I watched Gigantor a lot on TV, and I like robots. I've got a whole case full of tin robots over here, and so these guys, I really dug these guys. And that walk, those guys are CG, but that walk really is patterned after the walk that the actors were doing in the legacy suits. They had a great walk. We all liked it. We're like, okay, well, let's make it feel like that.
I want to
Now-
reference something you mentioned earlier on. What I love about the Dark Troopers is the way the light, because they're so dark in such a ill-lit kind of scene.
Yep.
Or not ill-lit, but dark lit scene. And the way the light just moves and reflects as they move is incredible.
Yeah, it's all the little shiny reflections
Mm.
that tell you what they're shaped like. Yeah, it's great.
Now, how much of a degree of difficulty does that add, having that light and being able to have to, go through the scene and have it move between a white light reflection and a red light reflection in different areas?
I mean, I think the fact that there were physical suits on set, like in this set that were shot, really helps us, really tells us what it should look like. So, I'm not saying it's easy, but just saying like all the due diligence we've done. We had real suits to look at to know what they look like, and then all the data gathering on set where we shoot our chrome ball and our silver ball. And actually, there's a shot. Oh wait, not yet. I'll point out a shot coming up that I know for sure is. I think what it is. I think it's actually just before Luke pops out of the elevator. There's a droid that kind of cocks its head like after the beam on the elevator, and there's a droid that kind of does this. That's the real suit. This
nice.
is still CG. That's CG as close as well. No, that super tight profile could be real. I don't remember now. Honestly, it's been
So it's
3 years
totally
of
rocket
COVID.
science.
We have to realize that this was at least 4 years ago.
I know exactly. And by the way, we did all of pre-production in lockdown, not just COVID, but like they literally finished shooting of season 2 about 2 weeks before the March 2020 or whenever that was. Everybody went into lockdown.
Wow.
And we did pretty much all the post-production from our homes. We're still, many of us are still working from home, but just saying that was the beginning of it. It was all very new to everyone. So
Yes, and the rest of the world as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So doing all this from home, what kind of like hardware setup do you have to do? Is like your computer the size of your closet?
No, it's normal. The hard part was getting us a good rock solid way to log into machines that are at studio from our home. Like I do most of my work now. I'm not a compositor. There's different, depending on what you do at ILM, sort of affects what sort of machine you need on site and all that. But most of my work I do, I'm looking at you through a MacBook, a Mac laptop.
Mhm.
And that's and I have an external monitor as well that sits alongside it. And that's what I work on. But I log into a machine that's at ILM, like on the premises there. That's a PC running Linux and all that. But it's not, it's not a cray supercomputer. It's a good PC with a decent graphics card and all that running Linux. I mean, that's honestly, people ask sometimes like, well, what's changed the most since you started? When I started, when I was on Toy Story in 95 and then at ILM in 96, we were all working on these Silicon Graphics workstations that cost, I don't know, $60,000 or whatever. And, the average citizen couldn't own them or buy, expect to buy them. And now it's very much more sort of democratic. You buy these relatively cheap PCs and whatnot, and the software is a lot less expensive than it was then and all. Anyway,
I love the original reveal here of a Luke saber being in black and white. So you really are not
and that was
sure
very
yet.
conscious. It was like, let's not tip our hand too soon.
Oh,
Yes.
and then you got the scene where you saw the face of Moff Gideon, like scared, and he obviously tries to pull Harry Carey in a few minutes because the last time, we were talking about this before, is that the last time anybody saw Luke Skywalker, the Emperor King was dead, and he was dragging the carcass of Vader, so he knew that he was in trouble there. But I remember when we watched it live, the first came out, we saw the X-Wing. I think the comment was, "Oh, look, it's Trapper Wolf. There's Dave Filoni right there to save the day again."
And
or Carson Teva, one of them. And
Yeah, right.
but it was great. As soon as you see the green lightsaber and the black glove, it's like, oh my god, it's
but they're still being cagey to see that it could be, because he's choked up on the hilt, the really identifiable part at the top. He's got his hand on that instead of
Yep.
Plo Koon in action right here, you know.
And the Grogu with his little hand on the monitor.
That's-
watching.
That's so
great.
sweet.
The
But
70s style monitors.
I mean the whole. I know they did some rendering for Plo Koon, and they talked about that in gallery because obviously that's Dave's favorite character. But like, how in depth were they trying to utilize that as the red herring before Luke?
Well, the whole sequence at the end where we see. So hang on, I'm going to show. So there's a shot coming up. That's the real Legacy suit there.
Mhm.
That panning shot on the droid, and then there's one more shot,
Yeah.
and there's others in the sequence, but it's been hard to pick them out going through it. There's one more coming up. That's the real
Shows
Legacy.
what the great job was done.
Yeah, that one where he cocks his head to the side. That's the real suit. Yeah, no. So all this stuff, obviously, we didn't have to do anything about because he's hooded. When
Right.
we see his face at the end, that whole sequence had to be sort of a duplicate version of that sequence had to be created with Plo Koon's head
Mm.
covering Luke's head and looking reasonably creditable. And that was for use in all the downstream, dubbing, voice dubbing, foreign language dubs, all that stuff. It was created for that purpose to kind of keep the secret as long as possible that Luke was in there, that Mark was in there.
Amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
So with Luke taking care of destroying the last trooper there, I almost genuinely thought a droideka would roll up. Something would roll up to prevent him from entering it.
Man, I'd love to do another droideka scene. That'd be so great.
Something with a protective shield to that would cause it
New
problems.
security system
Well,
is
if you think about when the droidekas show up initially, when with Qui-Gon and Anakin, they're at the blast shield right over there as well, trying to get through, and then droidekas come in, then they do super speed, which we never see again in any other movie or any sequence out there.
people have some super jumps and stuff you don't really see.
That saber.
And that hand, one glove
There
hand.
you go.
Unmistakable.
The belt buckle.
The belt did it for me.
And I love the fact that in Fett they brought back Mac.
Mhm.
Oh, frozen up.
We got frozen.
Oh,
Frozen
that
Spencer.
definitely. There's an entire shirt depicting this. We need to screen.
I think somebody got him the mug, right? Didn't Kathleen?
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's just pictures of him frozen. Whoops.
These shots look pretty good to me. I know that we've moved on and technology has moved on and deep fake and all that stuff, but looking at him here, I'm pretty happy with him. I haven't seen him in a while.
Mhm.
One thing I'll mention about the baby is that while he's mostly the puppet, we sometimes do CG baby shots, but I have to say, season 2, we did remarkably little CG baby stuff. The puppet is so great, and they built a new puppet for season 2 that was really good for shots like this where Dan is holding him, because it didn't have to have cables on it. It was radio controlled.
Oh, nice.
And so it gave us a lot more. Now here, it's the puppet.
Probably a little CG with the hair, or no?
I think I'm trying to remember
When he takes off the helmet, I'm pretty sure that hand is CG.
when he touches his face, because I know that was a thing we had to I think let's see, let's watch it. I think his head is real for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the puppeteers are just so good. Mike Menzel, he's one of the puppeteers. Yeah. So just arm of his hand or CG. The head is
different movement.
So, and because we wanted to really have the opportunity to fine tune exactly what the timing and the contact was with the hand, but all the frontal shots on the baby are real, the real puppet, and it's just so great. The guys have just gotten so good with him.
Yeah,
we really don't have to do a lot of CG baby anymore.
John and Dave brought the puppet into the Mando panel in Anaheim in May, and it was just unbelievable. From the distance that we were from the stage, you could see how incredible it was.
Yeah, well, they have them at what's it called?
Galaxy's Edge.
Galaxy's Edge.
Blackfire Outpost.
Oh yes.
So that's the CG baby. That shot where he turned around.
Mm-hmm.
That's the puppet. I don't know. I can't remember there. That might be CG. R2's CG in that shot because he doesn't. The physical one doesn't do that thing where he goes
Do
from
the
three legs
leg
to two.
retract.
Yeah, that
And-
quickly.
Yeah.
Mm.
But the finishes and all that, I think they got a good match on him. So now those bolts, I know those bolts were a point of contention out of his shoulders. That's because part of the subterfuge for these shots was that there were two different scenes, sessions. One with using Mark and an earlier shoot that was just the double without Mark there. And in that shoot, in order to throw anybody off the mark, they had a green R2 there. And the green R2 had the bolts. So we changed the color, but I'll be honest, none of us ever really noticed the bolts or thought about them. And so we didn't change them.
Right.
That's great insight.
But then the day that Mark was there's no point in having that subterfuge. I mean, for crying out loud, Mark Hamill's there. And
Yeah, who cares about R2? Right?
So they had a blue R2 there that didn't have the bolts. So it was a whole thing. But yeah, good fun. See, we spent, I would say, as difficult as this whole season was, and a ton of work went into the dragon fight, and a ton of work went into the Dark Troopers, and a ton of work went into, I mean, name it, any episode, the ice planet and the ice spiders and all that. But this scene, I feel like, caused us all more anxiety and stress and care and love and all that stuff than anything else in the whole season, because it was so important. Like, it had to work, So.
You're touching the original, generational story, right? With
For sure.
with Luke and
Lucas, who's that? Oh.
Well, you also see, like, we talked about this several times before. It was like the last time we as fans saw Luke Skywalker, he was the old man Luke, in Last Jedi, and that's when he died from ODing on the Force. This is Luke Prime. This is Luke who drank the Kool-Aid and is believing this hype that he can do anything. And
got to start up, and he's doing his thing.
For those fans who are not happy, you had to get this right. For those fans who were happy but still want to see Luke in his prime, the task was daunting. I mean, I can imagine just the angst from there, just saying that this is what it has to be.
And it's super important to John to kind of unify the fans as much as he can.
Right.
Like, let's put it this way, he's much happier, if that's the effect that things have on them, is to like bring people together rather than cause them to split them apart. And that was super important here. Oh, I just saw my name.
Oh. Who's that?
I know that guy.
Richard.
But it was super important to him to feel like, hopefully, this is a warm blanket for everybody, for people who liked or didn't like sequel film, whatever their feelings were, and people who love the original trilogy the most, or prequels or whatever. That it's like everybody feels good about it, and you can never make everybody happy, but
no, exactly. But the thing was that I remember an interview when they first announced Mandalorian, that John actually said that this was going to be the bridge.
Yeah, and then he really believes in that. He's a great guy who cares about people being happy. Like, he makes movies. He doesn't make movies to make people miserable or to like express some deep, dark side of himself, and doesn't care if people find it uncomfortable or whatever. Like, he likes to make movies that people like watching and enjoy and want, and it's like a family thing, and that literally matters to him, and it's one of the fun things about working for him. So yeah, it's a thing. It's a real thing, and it's lovely. To be honest, it's really nice. Oh, here we are. I love it. It's one of my favorite Macquarie designs. This whole thing with the shape forms and the Gamorreans, and that's
so.
Matt Wood, Skywalker Sound.
I actually have an 8x10 signed by Matt, and I had him do this whole speech, but I had him write the whole speech in Huttese. He's like, I actually have it on my phone because I had to study the Huttese. So he pulled out his phone and had it all in Huttese, and he wrote the whole speech at Huttese on my 8x10, which is awesome.
Oh.
It was worth it, but
That's awesome.
yeah, this is a nice little thing.
I had no reason to be on this set because again, there's no animated creatures or anything. But I made a point of visiting when this was being shot because I just like.
This was very impressive.
Set. It's a beautiful set, and Ming is great, and the whole, it's all awesome.
And what a gift to give us this as lifting us really from this kind of like sad, profound moment that we've just watched, and thinking, wow, where do we go from here? Is there going to be another series? And then boom, here's your like early Christmas present.
Well, Sherry just said something right now that was actually, I remember reading the credits as well and seeing Matt Wood did for Tuna. I'm like, what did I miss? Like, like, was I not paying attention? I know it's 3:00 in the morning, but.
Well, there was a couple times where you overlooked the end credit scene of something or
this
another.
This was one of them. This was actually it.
Okay. I was like, I remembered, letting it play and then kind of realizing late in it, like I was thinking earlier, that why isn't the screen gone little? And it's a telltale sign there's something else coming.
The great thing about streaming shows is that, obviously none of the other Mandalorian episodes, season 1 or 2, had post-credit scenes, so nobody's ready for it, right? Yeah. But the great thing about streaming shows is it's not one of those things where you get home from the theater and then you read online, oh, damn it, there was a post-credit scene, I didn't stay. With streaming, you're like, oh, crap, let me cue that back up. Check it out.
Well, it's like when you're going to a Marvel movie now and you're sitting there, the credits start, and then people start to walk away, and I'm thinking to myself, we've had 10 years of this stuff, people. Why are you getting up? Like,
I remember on the first, I've only worked on one Marvel film. It's the first Iron Man. They're Marvel's first film as their own studio.
And Favreau.
And I remember, exactly, and Favreau. And I remember clearly discussions about post-credit. It wasn't like a foregone thing. It wasn't like right from the beginning, they're like, oh, by the way, Marvel has a thing now where they're going to do this thing in every film. It was like, it was a discussion. And it was like, well, they might do this thing. I don't know. It's being discussed. And then it happened. And then it became like, the thing.
But it's now to the point where people are actually staying through movies that are not Marvel, just hoping that there's going to be something, because people are like hoping that, it's.
Yeah. I loved, back in the day when
throw it in a couple of times, and
I loved back in the day watching like old, I think it was like Smokey and the Bandit or one of those Burt Reynolds movies had those scenes with him and Dom DeLuise like breaking up and him and like basically assaulting Dom on a set.
Those are great. I love that.
That was the Cannonball Run.
Yeah,
Cannonball Run. Yeah, there we go.
Hal Needham was the one of the first people to do that in his films. Stunt guy, but he directed those films. I don't know if he directed he directed Cannonball Run and a bunch of other of those Burt Reynolds kind of stuntman sort of Hooper and etc.
That whole after credits or during credits thing.
I mean, I remember on the first Pirates film, some random meeting we had where we were in LA and they were shooting, but the meeting had to be during lunch to just catch Gore for whatever, a few minutes. And we had the meeting in his trailer. And I remember settling in the trailer and he was in mid-conversation with his producer or somebody about, we're thinking about not having head credits. We just want to do,
I remember that.
The Disney logo, whatever, and then just the Pirates logo, and we'll do everything else at the end. We still have to figure out with legal and all that if we can do that, if anybody's going to object, whatever. They were in the middle of discussing that. And then, obviously not as signature as Marvel's end credit stingers, but still the Pirates film all have that thing where there's the Disney logo, and then there's a little kind of almost like a cold open, and then the Pirates title, and then all the other credits, including Gore's, come at the end, main on ends. And it was I just happened to be, I might not have been there, but I was there that day. And it's funny to hear those things because it was like, oh yeah, that's kind of a signature of those films. That's how those films open. But it could have been not that way if somebody had objected. So, if Johnny or somebody, I don't know, somebody who had was like, no, I have to have my name at the head of the movie.
Mhm.
might not have been that way, but
It's a very, very Star Wars thing to do, which makes them even more fun.
Yeah.
And
It
those
is.
old,
It is very Star Wars thing to do, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
It's just film limited.
Something George, I think, got a lot of slack for, I think.
Well, there's probably more to it than that, but I know that I think that had something to do with him resigning from the DGA.
Right.
From the
I think, yeah, that's the
But
story that's told.
he wanted to be able to do that, and they objected, and but there may have been other things too. But I thought that was part of the whole story behind him bailing out of the Directors Guild. Yeah.
But I love the kind of influence that those kind of Cannonball Run bloopers at the end had on films that came later, to where, you know, they didn't exist, and the creators of Toy Story had to create bloopers. They went through the amount of extra work to do
Bugs
that.
Life. I think Bugs Life was the first film they did that. And what I love about that is just what you said, which is that unlike a live action film where all that stuff just exists because people are funny and they're riffing on set, they're blowing their takes, and they're being, you know, Dom DeLuise is giggling and, you know, whatever.
Each other up.
On an animated film, you literally have to make that stuff at great expense and effort.
Yeah.
And,
like,
but then they do it in a way that's so brilliant that it feels as effortless as an outtake. Like, oh, in fact, when you watch it, you sort of feel like you're watching outtakes, but then you have to remind yourself, no, they chose to do this, and they had to make this a great.
like, how many of the actors were actually together at one time for any of that? You know, like they had to totally fabricate it.
Yeah. No, the first time
they're not even in the booth together, you know.
And I think it was Bug's Life, and was the first time they did that, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's amazing! It's so meta. It's like on the one hand, it's extemporaneous and it's outtakes, but then you think about it for a second, you're like, oh no, wait, they had to plan for all this and budget it and stuff. Like, it's amazing.
They wrote that.
One thing I want to mention, I do see myself as fortunate to having a son that grew up in that animated era, you know, Bug's Life onto Toy Story. But it was such a wonderful thing for parents to go and watch movies, not just to say I was there with my kid, but to watch movies that had a little bit of something for adults as well, especially Toy Story. And I remember thinking, you know, this is going to be great because it's one of the latest, greatest technology, if you like, for animation movies, and then watching, you know, like Mr. Potato Head when he takes his lips off and touches his butt, you know, that kind of stuff. Just I remember thinking
they had a good touch with it, because there are films obviously where I think the filmmakers think they're making a film for everyone, but you sort of watch it and go, who is this for? Like, this doesn't seem like it's for little kids, and it not quite for adults. Like, I don't know what. Whereas Toy Story really felt like, okay, yeah, it's a film for everyone, but they're being just that much irreverent and tipping the hat towards their grown-ups, that grown-ups can kind of chuckle but not feel like, am I gonna have to explain that later to my
right?
You know, you're like, I feel like they tread the line just right, and yeah, and it was great. They also, you have to remember, it was right on the tail end of that super successful run of Disney animated features, like, you know, Little Mermaid,
Disney Renaissance,
Aladdin, which were all musicals, very much sort of Broadway, in the Broadway musical mold. In fact, all those were turned into Broadway musicals subsequently. And Toy Story was like, well, we'll have some music and we'll do what we call song sequences, which are basically montages over in that case, Randy Newman song. But they weren't musicals. The characters didn't spring into song. And that was also a big change for the time. So the CG was a big change, but also that it wasn't musical. And then the gently irreverent adult humor and play, adult, I say advisedly, but like you said, you know, Mr. Potato Head smooching his own behind with his lips and stuff, you know, or even the gag that he does where he says, hey, look, I'm Picasso.
Right.
Adults will chuckle at that, but they don't have to make it suddenly like uncomfortable for grown-ups, which
no, but that was like, I think
there's so many films like that where they're like, oh, we tried to make it for everyone. I was like, yeah, and you kind of made it for nobody, you know, because you didn't know who your audience was.
Well, I think the cool thing about Pixar doing that with Toy Story is they were bringing in a lot of that tradition that hadn't existed as much in Disney before, but had been a staple of like Warner Brothers. Bugs Bunny
Yeah.
has been doing
Yeah.
that since the 40s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all those Warner Brother cartoons were designed for at least as much for grown-ups as for kids, because they screened in theaters ahead of all the features, and they didn't just like program them for kids films. They didn't just load them up for kids film. Those showed with the newsreels in front of all the features, and they were designed to make the grown-ups kind of
Yeah.
eyeball each other like, oh, I get that, I get that, for sure.
I think for me personally, Pixar is a place in my heart because I used to live in the Bay Area. I don't now, as you know, living out of state, but to visit the Pixar, offices in Emeryville was just a thrill, and to have the lamp outside as well, on the campus there was just great. So
yeah, it's a beautiful campus for sure. It really is. I don't get over there too much. Every now and then for a screening or something, but when I do, it's nice. It's not where I worked. When I worked there on Toy Story, they were in Point Richmond, a whole other, still in the East Bay, whatever, Bay Area, but a different little, much more modest campus of like a little business park kind of thing. And then after Toy Story, I think between Toy Story 2, between I think they did Bugs Life, Toy Story 2, and then after that they moved down there, I want to say, but I was at Island by then.
And from the point of view of you're a Star Wars fan, right? Not just your career. What did you think of, just your general thoughts about Kenobi and Andor?
Oh man, I like both series a lot. Andor really took me on a journey. Because I had nothing to do with it, not involved in no meetings, no calls, had no, involvement whatsoever. That's not true. Actually, that's not true. When they got to doing the few shots of the Imperial Enforcer droids, the K2 style droids, Mo and Leo, who was the VFX supervisor, who was one of our effects supervisors on Rogue One, called me and asked for my opinion on some of the shots they were doing, and I gave him some feedback. Outside of that, no involvement whatsoever. No idea what the storyline was, any of it. The first third or so, I was like, okay, I'm following it. I kind of dig it. I like the tone. It's serious. It's kind of like a real war mini series with a Star Wars overlay, design overlay. But honestly, by the time I was in the middle, and certainly by the time that Cassian is in prison, for those who haven't seen it, I'm sorry, spoiler.
I don't know.
I was really into it on a whole other level. Like, it really hooked into me. I think the writing was absolutely terrific, and I really liked the production design and all that.
Tony Gilroy again.
Yeah, so I'm a massive fan, and I like Obi-Wan a lot as well. I really like Deb Chow. I think she's super talented. Got to work with her a little bit on first season of Mandalorian, and I think she's terrific. But I'd say Andor kind of got under my skin in a way that I just was not expecting. Like, I love Star Wars and all aspects of it. I want to see different versions and different tones and all that stuff, but it really snuck up on me. And by the end of it, I was like, holy cow, I could watch 10 more seasons of this. This is amazing. So yeah, big fan.
So Hanif has another question here. Is this one is kind of like thinking forward a little bit? Is what do you think of the Unreal Engine being more accessible to the general public now than before, and that creation and that the AI generated artwork? And do you think the future of animation in film is going to be with a kind of AI based platform?
Okay, taking it in two parts. Unreal Engine, real-time rendering in general is exciting and great, and it's going to render huge benefits for visual effects just because we can see results faster and get to a result sooner. Obviously, real-time rendering has been crucial to the volume, that whole virtual production pipeline, because you have to render real-time 3D environments around the actors on the LED screens. But it's going to have a lot more impact than just that. So that's one thing. AI is a more complicated question. AI is going to change everything we do in film and art and every other probably business on the planet and creative pursuit. At the moment, personally, the thing I like best about making movies are a highly collaborative, creative endeavor, unless you're an independent animator who's making a film in your apartment on your own, which is awesome. But just saying, at the end of it, the business that I'm in, it's highly collaborative. And I like that. Like, I like working with people, and I like seeing the results of human decision making. I'm really a lot less fascinated by the results of machine learning decision making. Because for one thing, it's not actually intelligence. We want to call it intelligence. It's not, at least at this point, it's not intelligence. It's interesting. It's going to make inroads and change a lot of things about the way we do things and how we create things. But just like, for instance, just taking a simple example, like graphic art, like image, painting, illustration, et cetera. There's a lot of conversation about this on Twitter, et cetera. And my feeling is, I've seen some really compelling, interesting images generated by machine learning, by someone's prompt given to a machine learning process, and it generates an image. I've seen some interesting and compelling imagery that way. And it's not even an argument about whether it's art or not. Like, that's a discussion I would never get into. I'm not going to tell anyone else what they think is art. A 2-year-old can make a drawing with a crayon that I feel like someone can call art if it moves them. It's not really, for me, it's not really about experience or talent or technical expertise or any of those things. I just like to know that what I'm seeing is the product of a human's choices. That to me is just interesting. It's just infinitely more interesting to me than the gimmick of machine learning generating an image. And so for that reason, and just personally, I'm much more interested in working with people on seeing what they choose to put down on as an image than what an AI can generate. That doesn't mean that I think it should be outlawed or whatever. I think there's an argument, and certainly I've seen a lot of arguments on one of the big discussion points on Twitter, et cetera, is about how some of the learning libraries, or whatever, when you want to call them, for AI systems are drawing on the artwork of the hard work of a lot of artists and kind of ripping them off in a way, and sort of putting them through a blender and generating a thing. And I think that has to be looked at. I don't think artists' hard work should be just fodder for a mechanical process. So to me, that's a pretty simple argument. It's like, yeah, that shouldn't be the case, and people's artwork should be protected, and yada yada. But the softer thing of, should we be using it for it's like, well, we should cautiously be investigating it as part of a process for creating things. But I don't, for me personally, it's not a replacement for what the human brain.
Fascinating.
See, I'm enough of an art historian that I know that this kind of argument is something from more than 100 years ago with the invention of the camera. And, the argument on, is that artwork at this point? And, myself being a visual artist and an art teacher, I'm doing a lesson this week with elementary school children. And one of the artworks, I'm showing them a Leonardo, a Michelangelo, the Great Pyramid, and an Ansel Adams.
Right.
So when you show them the Ansel Adams and you go, what kind of artwork this is? Oh, it's a mountains and a river. Like, well, those were not created by human hand. The artwork is the photograph of the mountains and the river.
Right.
And I don't know how that applies to AI yet.
Well, and I've heard, I've had discussions with people who were like, oh yeah, well, painters made these same arguments when photographers arrived on the scene, and physical media artists, painters, people who
the digital media artists.
so made these arguments when digital painting tools came on the scene. And to me, that's all beside the point, because for me, it's not about technique. That's not my argument. My argument isn't, oh, well, a human hand didn't draw that. That's the argument some people have, and that's fine. They can argue that about technique. I'm just, like I said, for me, the primary concern personally is that all the thousands of little decisions that go into creating an image, do we put red here or blue here? Do we draw a bold line or a thin line? Do we, whatever, all those just thousands of little decisions in crafting an image. I'm more interested when I know that those came out of somebody's brain, and with whatever their background is and whatever drives those decisions and makes them think that puce looks better here than beige, and that, drawing a really bold line here looks better than a little sketchy line or whatever. That to me is infinitely more fascinating than
where human emotion is involved rather than just a decision-making process, because it's a process.
Yeah. It's a process, exactly. And the process is, for me, is the magic. The result is magical too, and great to see, but the process is really the exciting part. So, and when that becomes just like a black box that you go, I want to see this picture, and then it comes out, I'm like, trick.
Sort of like a weird Google search, but a lot more invasive.
Yeah. But we'll see. I hope my feelings on this will evolve over time. I hate to be somebody who gets locked into a notion and is unwilling to learn and change and whatever. So we'll see, 10 years from now.
Very interesting discussion, though. Very interesting. Is there any other questions in the chat, Dave?
That, I believe, is the end of them.
So it's very fitting that we ended with a little bit of a teaser for FET, because next week we're actually kicking off with Chapter 5 of the Book of Boba Fett, which is Return of the Mandalore. And we have two guests joining us, a first time and a reoccurring guest that has not been back since our first season of Mandalorian. First person we're announcing is Tate Fletcher. Tate, who plays Heavy Mando or Paz Vizsla.
Awesome.
Who does the body work for the voice that Jon Favreau is known for in that. And also with him will be the armorer herself, Emily Swallow.
Wow.
Emily.
Awesome.
So with that episode, which has a very big scene of the two of them with Mando, and talking about their involvement together, especially also in season 1, is going to lead to some great conversations and everything like that. So hopefully everybody at home are watching with us now, watches us next week. We're excited having the two of them on next week. But Hal, thank you so much for coming on with us again.
Awesome.
Absolutely. I think I want to quote, someone shared a tweet after the last time we were on, said that it felt like they were at a master class watching this, and they watched, I think, over in Germany, and they retweeted the episode and said, people pay a lot of money for master classes, and they got it by watching the show. So thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we can have you back on for season 3.
Oh, that's great to hear. It's super fun. Love chatting with you guys, and it's really fun to revisit these episodes and talk about them and just Star Wars stuff in general. So it's been super fun. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure and our honor. John, anything before we close out?
Oh, just that, as always, from the last time Hal was on, very insightful, very inspirational. Follow this man's work, and it's just a huge treat for me to actually speak to him in person. So thank you, Hal.
Very much. Thanks.
Yes.
I just look forward to the finale trifecta, as it were, when you come again and you regale us with your amazing stories and
hopefully.
Absolutely. Dave.
Amen. We'll make it happen.
Thank you again. I totally reiterate the master class is digital artwork and animation has been something that I've studied, and I try and pass on to the next generation on a daily basis, and just hearing real world perspective on it is amazing.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
Excellent. So for those who are playing at home, don't forget also on Saturday, we have a very special international news desk going over events that are happening around Celebration, including our very own Bunta Eve, #Cantina, the Club Bash, and a couple of other special things, including guests from Fantha Tracks, Jedi News, our DJ Level Up Leroy, and members of the band Blues Harvest. So it's going to be quite an afternoon with your VC family, being joined by myself, Gary O'Toole from Blob of the Hut over in Ireland, and Mark Van Olen from the Rebels Revisited crew. So it's going to be a full house, lots of stuff, lots of exciting news and reveals and all that jazz. But please join us. That'll be at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time this coming Saturday. And I believe the Sunday crews have off this week. Is that correct, Dave?
Yep, 5th Sunday of the month. So Jedi Archives and the Unifying Force are off. We will see you back with a new episode of Jedi Archives on the first Sunday of February.
Excellent. And of course, don't forget, on Monday, we have another episode of Rebels Revisited, which is great. So once again, Hal, thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute honor to have you join us anytime you want. And thank you very much for, like we said, the masterclass. It's been an absolute treat.
Awesome. Super fun, guys. Super fun.
Excellent. So from Hal, from Jeff, from Dave, from the governor, this is Spencer saying, this is the way.
This is the way.